right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. We are featuring on tonight's Aloha Social Travel Series the Naya liveaboard that travels around Fiji. It's a trip that we're going to do July 25th through August 8th of 2026. This presentation is a little bit of a redo. I did do it a few weeks back, but failed to record it. So tonight I'm being joined by Sean Dooley, who's helping me. He's holding my hand here in the background, making sure that this presentation is being recorded. In addition, I am so thrilled tonight. Rob Barrel, who is the owner of the Naya, has graciously agreed to join us, and we'll be talking a little bit about what makes this 14-day itinerary special, and some of the things that he can speak to. So very excited to have him on board. Thank you, Rob. I see you there. I appreciate having you tonight. Wonderful. So let's go through my presentation a little bit quickly, and then we'll leave some time. Rob's going to go over the itinerary, and then we're going to point you to a video of the, it's on Vimeo, that kind of highlights all the diving, so you can see all that soft coral and lush hard corals that can be found, and the big critters. The video is just spectacular, so we'll point you to that. As you know, video does not come across the internet very well over IP, so we'll point you to that and you can watch it later. All right, next slide here. So first of all, where is Fiji? So it is located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Fiji is a tropical paradise known for its exceptional scuba diving. It anchors a corner of the Coral Triangle, serving as a major reef structure for marine species migrating from Indonesia and the East. With over 300 islands featuring diverse reefs, perfect water temperatures, and nutrient-rich environments, Fiji supports rapid coral growth and abundant fish populations. So getting there, we will fly to either San Francisco or Los Angeles, and we can take a direct 11-hour, it's a 10 or 11-hour flight on Fiji Airways into Nadi. Fiji Airways offers 4 different fare categories in economy and 2 for business class. The comfort fare allows for 2 checked bags and the ability to select your seat. And I would budget about $1,300 for comfort fare to get your 2 pieces of 50-pound luggage over there. We suggest arriving the day before, which would be in this case July 24th. We can explore the hotel options as we get closer. We've stayed at the Toka Toka Hotel, located only minutes from the airport before, but regardless of where we stay, the hotel pickup and transfer to the Naya is at 1 p.m. and the marina is about a 1-hour bus ride. So packing for a liveaboard is much easier than packing for a land-based resort, because it's just us, folks. So besides your standard dive gear, every diver must have a dive computer, a safety sausage, whether that's a surface marker buoy or a delayed surface marker buoy that you would deploy at the safety stop, and a whistle. I, of course, recommend a backup dive computer. You can't go all that way and not have a backup dive computer. So even if you have to rent one, you should bring a second computer. Water temp in Fiji in late July, early August averages about 79 degrees. Rob and I were talking before this presentation, and I think we were looking at about 81, I think, is historical. Was that true, Rob? Yeah, it was something like that. So for me,
it varies about 3 degrees,
okay.
and currently this year is slightly warmer than average, but still it could get down to 79, 80 which is cold over a week or two.
It is, and I said for me, with the opportunity for multiple dives in a day, I would wear my 5 mil, and then I said others might wear a 3. And Rob goes, I would recommend everybody wear their 5 mil. You just the fact of the matter is that's just on that edge where you're going to be cold, and once you get cold, it's just no fun. So plan on a 5 mil, and then bringing some layering pieces like a hooded vest or a heated shirt or something of that nature, just so you have some layering and can accommodate different water temperatures. Again, the dress on the liveaboard itself is very casual. Don't forget your hat, sunglasses, and reef safe sunscreen. And I pack at minimum 4 bathing suits, so I don't ever have to wear a wet one in between meals, because of course the schedule is eat, sleep, and dive. So you can't go to the dining room with wet clothes. So pack plenty of bathing suits. So, and Rob might be able to interject here, but just some of the stats on the Naya itself. It was built originally in 1979. It had an extensive rebuild in 93 and additional retrofits in 2000 and 2010. It's 120 foot with a 30-foot beam. It accommodates a maximum of 18 guests with 9 cabins and 12 crew. And Rob, look at this. It says Starlink for $150 per trip. So that's an important data point for a lot of my travelers, especially on such a long itinerary as this one. You can get connected if you've used Starlink. It really is wicked fast internet and available via satellite, so we have access to it throughout our journey. So obviously that price might go up in a few years, but budget about that $150 mark. Rob, is there anything else you'd like to add about the Naya itself?
Now, all those statistics are accurate. The main thing that made her appeal to me when I bought her is that she's Dutch built and really very well built and designed. The designer, William de Vries Lench, had designed about half of the mega yachts that existed back in 1979. Um, so he's got a very fine pedigree, and the builders in Amsterdam who built Naya did a fantastic job. So she's a very, very seaworthy boat. She's been all over the South Pacific. She's been aground a few times on reefs and done more damage to the reef, unfortunately, than to her steel hull. So she's a brilliant, strong boat, and that's why she's still going.
What does the Naya, what does that translate to?
Means dolphin. And when I had the name for my boat about 20 years before I had the boat, I always wanted to call it Naya. And I actually returned to university after sailing the Pacific for about 11 years. I went back to university and studied dolphin behavior, and at that time managed to convince my professor to convince the owner of one of the yachts that I'd been running to pay for the boat. So the boat was initially designed to do a longitudinal study of whale and dolphin behavior while supporting itself doing liveaboard diving on the side. So the name Naya, which is Hawaiian, made obvious sense.
That's fantastic. Thank you. All right, so a little bit of tour of the boat itself. On the upper deck, it features the galley and dining room. It's got a very large salon. The Naya serves a variety of international cuisine, including fresh fish, locally grown produce, and meats. The chef can accommodate special dietary needs if notified in advance, and wine is served with dinner. But if you can look at all of those furnishings, look at how beautifully appointed it is. All those woods, Rob, was that indigenous there to Fiji?
Yeah, a lot of it is. And unfortunately, well, you can see one little table that doesn't have the tablecloth on it.
Mm-hmm.
Those tables show all the different types of timber that went into building the boat, a lot of which was mahogany grown, plantation grown mahogany, actually. And a little bit of it was native forest, which I now, frankly, feel guilty about having contributed to the harvesting of. But back then, 30 years ago, we didn't appreciate that to the extent that we do now. So she is beautiful. And about food, we've been very lucky to have a series of really brilliant chefs who keep outdoing one another. Each time we have to hire a new chef, I think, oh, it can't possibly be as good as what Mita used to do. And it is. They're brilliant. And so we have really, really good food.
Excellent, excellent. Um, okay, so additional to the salon and is on the upper deck is the dive deck and camera room. As you can see, there's dive stations for each person. There's wetsuit hangers, and then the room for the camera room is very large and spacious and accommodating for those of us with bigger cameras. And I believe this is also where we store additional luggage. It is that this is sort of representative of what it looks like today. Yes, Rob?
Yes, it is. And normally your dive bags get stored up here. The other furniture, other luggage that you have, a lot of it can be stored in your stateroom. There's quite a lot of room, and stuff that doesn't fit there, we've got other places to store it. But you can, if you've got some, spare dive gear in your bag that you don't actually need, but you want to have close at hand, it'll be in the camera room there, easily accessible.
Wonderful. And I remember when I was on the ship in 2008, we put down blankets on the teak right there in the dive area, and the crew would play the guitar and sing, and it was just a great place to gather and enjoy an evening. I think there was some kava that was drank.
I think there may be a picture of our entertainment night coming up. Certainly in the video that we'll point you guys to look at, that's covered. And it's often one of the highlights of the trip. Everybody's there to go diving, but what they often go home talking about is how great the crew were and how wonderful, especially the entertainment night, the shore visits. The crew sit out there in the dive deck playing guitar kind of all the time. And then one night we kind of formalize it. Everybody wears your Sulu, and we have a proper entertainment night. But you get three Fijians together in a bus stop, and they just start singing. So every Fijian can sing, and we have a remarkably talented band. We actually recorded them a number of years ago until we realized that we were um, breaking copyright law,
Oh.
so we backed away from doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. We'll highlight this in a moment, but I especially enjoyed all the cultural interactions, some of the village visits and stuff like that. So just getting immersed in the Fijian culture is what makes the trip especially special. So, all right, talking about the lower deck, this is where all the cabins are, and as Rob mentioned, the rooms themselves are very spacious. So cabins 1 and 2 feature a king bed. Cabin 3 features twin bunk beds. Cabins 4, 5, and 6 can be either 2 twins or a king. And cabins 7 and 8 can be a king and a twin bunk. So we do have some pictures of these cabins next here. So this is what cabins 4, 5, and 6 will be approximately. They're a little bit different each room, but twins, either 2 twin beds or into 1 king bed. So again, lots of room, nice furnishings. The bathroom, I think of these bathrooms, Rob, are they both? Does it have a separate shower? It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, the shower is sort of in the back of the space, toilets in the front,
Okay.
and they're all, we had them designed and built in Fiji out of really solid fiberglass. So they're good, solid structures that are easily kept clean, which is really important for the head.
For the head area, exactly. All right, and then cabin 3 is 2 twin beds, and they're sort of cantilevered. That top one is cantilevered off of the ceiling there. but it does give lots of room for both occupants. And again, nice cupboards for each person as individuals in this room here in cabin 3. All right, cabin 7 and 8, again, is going to be a king bed and a twin bunk. So easily accommodating either 2 individuals or as a couple. It's kind of a nice place to throw your suitcases and your extra stuff on that twin bunk.
And I'll just say those 2 rooms, all the rooms are quite big, but a few years ago when we wanted to travel to Fiji with my family, um, and unfortunately the boat was almost always full, so we struggled to find enough space to fit ourselves into. We'd often put our whole family in one of these rooms, so 2 adults and 2 kids. And it was a little bit crowded, but it was manageable.
Yeah, I would think if you were a family, this is perfect, right? You were able to put, put the kids in the bunk bed and have room for yourselves. So I can see why you've got it, and it's still spacious and comfortable for everybody. So nice.
Yeah, 2 adults and 1 kid works pretty well. 2 kids is pushing it a little bit.
And how many kids do you guys have?
Luckily, just 2.
Just 2.
And now they're full size and require their own space.
I think in 2008 they were still pretty young, but they're adults now.
Yeah, that's true.
Excellent. Okay, dive conditions. So Fiji does not have a fall, winter, spring, summer season. There are 2 seasons, a dry season, May to October, and a wet season, November to April. The wet season is hot and sticky with torrential but often brief downpours, with January through March being the wettest period. The dry season offers cooler temperatures, less rainfall, and generally calmer seas. It is considered the peak season for tourism in Fiji. So what to expect for water temperatures? They will range, as we've already discussed, between 75 to 81, but visibility is at its best, often exceeding 100 feet. Marine life, the reef fish are more abundant and the coral reefs are in full bloom. It's an ideal time to see sharks, particularly around sites like Becca Lagoon and the Coliseum. Species such as gray reef sharks, white-tip reef sharks, and even hammerheads are more commonly seen. Turtle sightings are frequent, with green and hawksbill turtles being the most common. Dive conditions, the seas are calmer and offer excellent visibility, providing ideal conditions for all levels of divers. The calm conditions and clear water make this the best time for exploring Fiji's famous soft coral reefs and dramatic underwater topography. Dive sites like the Great Astrolabe Reef and
That's right.
Namina Marine Reserve. Namena Marine Reserve offer spectacular diving experience during this season. So this picture also it features the dive deck and then the tenders. So I think Rob's going to talk a little bit more about our itinerary and we can potentially toggle to that.
Yeah. And just before you go on, I want to say about the weather generalizations in that previous slide. Those generalizations are becoming a little bit less accurate as time goes on, as climate change is beginning to show itself. So the clear difference between summer and winter is not as clear as it used to be. And winter, which is when you folks will be there, will be cooler than summer, but it could also be windy. It's not necessarily the calmest time of year. And in a 2-week trip, there will be enough time for different weather patterns to pass through. So it's likely that you'll have kind of the whole gamut of weather. There'll be a period of time where it's quite windy, then that'll move away, it'll get a bit calmer, then it'll get really calm, then it'll start to get windy again, and that cycle sort of repeats itself. But it's getting less and less possible to predict that nowadays, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think those of us that have traveled over the last 20 years, we noticed that in other destinations as well. So I don't think anybody would be surprised. So Rob,
Hmm.
we're switching over to the interactive map. Can you see that now? You might need to share.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay. Do you need to?
But so wait, is that my one?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay, all right. So I can't see your. So can you see me zoom out just now on this map?
Wait,
Um.
oh, he wants to share
Okay.
his.
I tell you what,
I
Rob.
can.
Let's hang tight for a minute. Then let me go through the presentation, and then we'll circle back to you, and then we can toggle before we screw it up too bad. Unless you
All
No,
can.
right,
he
yeah, good idea.
just needs to present.
Oh, you just need to present. Okay.
So I have to switch to him, right?
Okay.
Where's he at?
Right here.
Okay. And then make presenter.
Oh, look. Um, Share.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Can you see that?
We can.
Okay, good. Um, I'll go a little bit wide again just to point out where we are. So here we are in the middle of the Pacific. Australia over here, New Zealand down below, Hawaii is just off the map up there, and you guys are all up there in the upper right hand corner. So in my I grew up in Hawaii and sailed a lot. So from Hawaii, I sailed back and forth to America a couple times, down to French Polynesia one time, and eventually all the way to New Zealand. Another time we came down via Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, and also New Zealand. Another time I sailed all through the Western Pacific and eventually spent a lot of time in Guam, Palau, and then the Philippines. And then another time, I picked up the boat in New Zealand and sailed it all up through the South Pacific. So I spent a lot of time sailing, 11 years sailing in the South Pacific, many thousands of miles. And what I learned was that Fiji was really the place that I most enjoyed. And at that point, it wasn't even really from the diving perspective, because we had scuba tanks in the boat, but they were mainly reserved for untangling your anchor in the middle of the night and exciting things like that. So we did a lot of snorkeling, not much sport scuba diving. But what I saw was brilliant. Then, when I sailed to Palau a few years after that, I got to know Avi Klapfer, who had the Sun Tamarin liveaboard in Palau, the only one and only liveaboard in Palau at the time. And I ended up working with Avi for about 6 months, and eventually he sold the boat. He put in the undersea hunter fleet in Cocos Island that you guys have undoubtedly heard of and hopefully had a chance to dive with. And but and I helped Avi at the beginning of running the Undersea Hunter. And the very first commercial charter he had with real paying passengers, Avi couldn't do because he had pre-sold a trip with all his best photography clients to go to Fiji. So I ran his boat for him in Cocos Island while he took a whole group of people out to Fiji to go diving. At the end of that, he came back, developed all his slides, and told me that in a 10-day trip in Fiji, he got more brilliant photos than he had in the 2 years that he ran his boat in Palau. And coming from him, one of the most experienced divers, and one of the two people I would choose to be stranded at sea with in the world, coming from him, I totally took his word for it and realized that Fiji was a great place, not only because of the people, the climate, but also because of the diving. So when I convinced the owner of one of my yachts to build Naya as a liveaboard, we brought it to Fiji. There was no question about that. And we started running the boat out of the capital of Suva and doing our diving down here in the southern area of um, Benga Lagoon, and quite quickly realized that that wasn't the best part of Fiji. So I chartered an airplane one day, took off from Suva, and flew all the way around here looking for whales. I believe that up here in this northern area is where all the whales were hiding out, and that was fundamentally why I was in Fiji in the first place. And while we didn't find any whales, we did find a bunch of really good looking dive sites. So we quickly brought the boat around the corner and started diving in this area between the two main islands of Viti Levu and Vanua Levu in the north. And it wasn't long before we realized that this area of central Fiji really has the best diving in the country. And what we haven't totally figured out is why that is. There are a bunch of theories, and we've had a number of scientists, including Jerry Allen, the famous fish ID guy, come out and dive with us and attempt to deduce what it is that's going on in this area of Bly water. And kind of the leading beliefs are that there's a current that runs up between the two islands, mainly from the southeast to the northwest, but sometimes it reverses and goes the other way. That brings nutrient rich water from deep water. It bumps into these reefs and seamounts, and so you get an upwelling that brings all that rich water up, and that's part of it. Another part of it is that because these reefs are within the rain shadow a little bit of the two main islands, they're slightly more sheltered from direct baking sun, and possibly that's helpful. There's also a little bit more runoff coming from the two islands, and possibly that's helpful. Um, but the main thing that we've come to believe is that all of the reefs around in this area are so healthy that if anything happens to any one or even a number of them from coral bleaching or a cyclone or something like that, there's always going to be a protected seed reef somewhere nearby. And as the ocean currents slosh back and forth through this area, the that nutrient rich water and the spawn from seed reefs um, covers all the other reefs and they grow back very quickly. So in 2016, the biggest cyclone ever recorded in the southern hemisphere and the second biggest cyclone ever recorded anywhere in the world came right through central Blywater, right over the bulk of our best dive sites, and turned a bunch of them into something that looks like a parking lot. All of the coral was knocked off and just turned into rubble down at the bottom. It was absolutely devastating. But we went out and discovered that while that was the case at this particular reef, that reef facing slightly different 100 meters away was barely affected. And so while we had to hunt and search a bit more to find the best diving, it didn't take long before the sites that had been completely cleaned off of coral started coming back. And it was really only 3 years, much quicker than people believed, before we had complete coral growth on the top of each of these coral reefs. And a few years after that, that coral had grown up enough that the edges were competing with each other. And I was just there in February, and there are many, many reef tops and edges where you can't find a place to put a fingertip down if you're trying to take photographs. The coral is so healthy and so diverse. On one area, about 2 meters by 2 meters, I counted 13 different species of coral, all growing in that one location. So that central Fiji area is extraordinarily rich. And we have been working for nearly 20 years now with a few NGOs to protect it. And it is protected from local fishing. So there never was a lot of fishing to begin with, and certainly no dynamite fishing or anything like that. But um, being protected from a little bit of line fishing has really helped. And really, the place has saved itself because it's extremely rich. Um, we start our trips over here in Lautoka. So you guys will have flown into Nandi. We'll pick you up, take you in a bus to Lautoka. We'll go out and do the first dive off of Lautoka. It's not a great dive, but it is wet, and it gives you the opportunity to get your weights and figure out how your new wetsuit needs to be balanced and all the settings on the camera that you haven't used for 6 months, and lets you get all that stuff settled. Then overnight, we steam all the way up past the northern tip of the island to one of these reefs, and probably we'll go to the Vatuira area. And as you zoom in on it, you can see that there are a whole bunch of different reefs in this area. There are probably 7 or 8 different dive sites. The anchorage is where I've got the boat, um, the icon here. And just before I go on, I should check. You guys can still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfectly,
good.
Rob. Yeah, everything's going good.
Okay, because it's silent from my side, I was afraid here I am talking into the void and nobody's hearing me. Um, right, so the Vatuira area has a whole bunch of different reefs. This one, this section of it is called Howard's Diner because Howard Hall shot Coral Reef Adventure IMAX film. A lot of it was shot here. And at one point, we managed to find the Triton trumpet shell, and he wanted to get a picture of the Triton trumpet being eaten by something, by a crown of thorns. So for 5 days, the whole group of us went out trying to find a crown of thorns, which you can find them when you're not looking for them, but as soon as you want to find one, you couldn't. And eventually we found a crown of thorns and set up this IMAX shot of the Triton trumpet shell eating the crown of thorns. It's going to be a blockbuster shot on the big IMAX screen. And the fact is, the way it eats it, the shell climbs over the crown of thorns and sits on top of it, and everything happens with chemical action underneath, and all you see is a shell that's not moving. Turned out a remarkably boring shot that took 5 days of IMAX funding to shoot. Um, I notice as I zoom in here, there's a little boat there. That's one of my skiffs, anchored over a dive site called Mellow Yellow. Sorry, Maytag, because it does catch quite a good current. Um, this whole line of reef is just spectacular. One of my favorite sites in the entire world is this big coral head, which we call Go-Mo. We'd been diving this area over here when one of our skiff drivers sort of drifted away a little bit. And as I came up after the dive, he came over to me, his eyes were giant. He said, I just found a whole new reef. Back in those days, we didn't have the benefit of satellite imagery to see all these things this clearly. So we jumped in on it, and it was brilliant. And his name is Mo, so we called it Go Mo.
Cute.
So that's Vatuira.
Hey Rob,
And
real quick. Carol was asking, when is cyclone season? Obviously, it's not a perfect, you know, but
yeah, no, that's a good question. It's just ended. So the official end is the end of April, and it begins officially about November. But one of the few storms that actually affected us and made us have to change our itinerary happened in June. So that was 30 years ago. So it is variable, but it's much more concentrated during the warmer summer season.
good. Thank you.
Okay. And I encourage you guys in due course to go to this interactive section of our website and then read what we've written about these dive sites. It's we tried to be pretty accurate, and you'll find a lot of information from that. Um, as we continue on beyond Vatuira, we get to the twin seamounts of Mount Mutiny, which is quite a small seamount, and named because Captain Bligh, after the Bounty mutiny, actually drifted through this channel in his longboat shortly before getting chased by the cannibals from whom he escaped into a rain squall. But as he drifted through here, he actually charted these reefs reasonably well. And one of the little circles he made on his map was this coral head.
Ah,
So I called it Mount Mutiny after him. The other reason we named it that is because we had intended one day to dive at Mount Mutiny for one dive and then shift over here to this other beautiful pinnacle. And the divers came back from the morning dive and said, "Look, if you try to move the boat away from here, we're going to take the propeller off this ship," which I which constituted a mutiny, so that added to the name. Um, because the other seamount nearby is called E6 for all the um, film processing we used to do. Mount Mutiny, prior to being renamed, was called uh, High 8 for the video that we used to shoot there. So High 8 became Mount Mutiny. E6 is a bigger seamount, similar to Mount Mutiny, but much bigger. It comes up from 3,000 feet to the surface. And right at the moment, my friend Avi from Costa Rica and his partner Yossi, their research boat, the Argos, which is the boat that carries the deepwater submarine,
Yeah.
is in Fiji doing as part of a 5 year, like the ultimate charter that all of us dream of, a 5 year charter with National Geographic Pristine Seas all through the Pacific. And I've begged them to put their submarine in the water here at E6 and go down to the bottom and see what's there. I know there's lots of our scuba gear is down there that's been dropped over the years. And there's going to be shipwrecks, all sorts of things. And when we were shooting the IMAX film, Coral Reef Adventure, Howard Hall and his team did a number of dives down to 450 feet here at E6. And below about 250 feet, there are big schools of hammerheads, the kind of schools you normally see in Galapagos or Cocos. They're here as well, but they seldom come up above 250 feet. They do on occasion. I've never seen hundreds of them, but you'll see little groups of 10 or 15 that come up to the depths that our divers can see. But the edges of this thing is completely covered in beautiful soft corals, lovely hard corals, and because it drops down so steep, you often see interesting things like thresher sharks and things that you don't normally see come up from the depths here at E6.
Mm.
So, continuing this itinerary, we steam all the way up, we bypass Wakaya for the time being, and we go all the way down here to the island of Ngau. GAU is Ngau. Ngau has two main dive sites. The one down in the bottom is called Ningali Passage, and it's a narrow little passage. Sunlight on this image isn't very good, but it's a narrow passage through the reef that concentrates sharks. And when I very first got to Fiji 33 years ago and started asking people where the best diving was, there were two places that were named. One of them was here, Ningali Passage, because at the time there was a liveaboard boat here and they had discovered this place. And it's a nursing area for gray reef sharks. So you see the female gray reef sharks there year round, and occasionally you'll see males, rarely, but they come during the mating season. And what people tend to overlook is it's also just a beautiful dive in its own right. The edges of the channel are covered in beautiful hard and soft coral. Lots of the inside of the channel has big schools of barracuda, trevally, actually two species of barracuda, and there's some giant groupers that live on the bottom. But what normally steals everybody's attention are these schools of sharks. So you start on the outside on an incoming current, you drift in, and by the time you get about halfway into the channel, you start seeing the odd shark come swimming past you. And by the time you get into this area, which we call the bleachers, there's actually an area of coral that you can sort of tuck in and hide behind and grab onto because there's quite a strong current at that point. And the sharks just circle around here. They cruise up current very slowly, and then they shoot down current. And then they cruise up and they shoot down.
Mm.
And for photographers, it's great because you can get a picture of a shark just gliding right past you. And for just us normal people watching, it's spectacular. They're really beautiful animals. But because the current is so critical, you only have 2 times a day to dive it. So on a longer trip like this, one of the great advantages of having more time is that you can spend more time in places like this. So instead of just the one afternoon dive we do and then we have to move on, I'd spend 2 days or even more in this location because the channel has all sorts of different things going for it. Plus, the outside wall is very interesting. It's going to be the clearest water of the trip because it's down here, just on the edge of the deep, deep ocean.
Okay.
And, it could be beautiful. Another place that you might want to go to on a longer trip
Hey,
is
Rob,
this
real
reef.
quick. Can I interrupt real quick? So
Sure.
what is the Naya policy on reef hooks in passages like that?
Yeah, we encourage reef hooks. Um, we in a place like that, there's also a place that's really well set up for actually physically hanging on with your hands if you need to. So um, our divers, and I expect your people, are all pretty reasonable about looking after the reef nowadays. I think the old days of people not having a clue and thrashing things are pretty much over. Our divers tend to be really thoughtful about what they do. So reef hooks are useful, but like in this specific case, they're not that useful because it's actually easier to tuck into this little hole where your body is out of the current. You can kind of stand there, and it's like standing behind a fence, and it's more comfortable than hanging off a reef hook.
Okay, thank you. What about gloves then? Could somebody wear a glove?
Yeah, we don't discourage you from wearing gloves. We say if you do wear gloves, just pay attention to where you're putting your hands.
Good.
And if you don't wear gloves, by definition, you pay attention to where you're putting your hands.
Fair enough. All right, thank you. All right, thank you. Yeah, somebody had that question, so I appreciate you answering that.
Yeah, and interrupt me at any point. I can't see, possibly there's a window where I could see these questions, but I'm not seeing it. So do interrupt me.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I was just saying this reef south of now is really spectacular in many ways. What it doesn't have is the beautiful hard coral that by the time you're here, you will have seen this beautiful hard coral in other places. The reefs on the outside of Fiji um, get bigger waves, basically. So, because they're often hit by big waves, the beautiful hard and soft coral expanses that you see elsewhere, you don't see so much in these locations. And I'll use this as a little diversion um, to point out this whole Lao group that runs up and down the eastern edge of Fiji. When I first came and started diving in Fiji, I looked at this chart and I went, well, obviously, the best diving is going to be on those islands that's farthest away from everything else. And so off we went for this exploratory trip in in Lao, and discovered that while there was a handful of good diving, it really didn't compare to what we had already discovered by that time in central Fiji. And the reason is it gets hammered.
Mm.
So when there are big waves, the normal easterly winds um, hit the windward sides of all these islands. In many cases, they wrap around. The anchorages aren't that good, and it's a long way from one island to another. And if it's rough at all, it can be quite rough passages from one place to another. So every 2 or 3 years, we go out to Laos again and have a look at it and go, yeah, it's nice, it's different, but it's not really worth the effort. We're better off spending more time in this area of central Fiji that's much better protected from damaging waves and therefore has more healthy coral, soft coral, and fish populations. So the other place in Ngao, because you can only dive this twice when the current is incoming, luckily up here in the northern part of Ngao, the current comes in at the opposite time that it does to Ningali Passage down the south. And there's an area, which I think the satellite picture is not even good enough to show yet, of a series of coral heads in this big channel that are flushed with, on the outgoing current, it's flushed with rich but not very clear lagoon water, and therefore you've got lots of life there. So it's really good macro photography. It's not as good visibility as elsewhere, but confusing the issue for photographers who have to decide between a macro lens and a wide angle lens is the fact that it's for sure going to be good for macro, but there's likely to be manta rays. So that's the problem. Um, but there are other places that are probably more likely to have manta rays. So if you have to make that decision, then you want to think about doing macro photography when you're at, this is called Jim's Alley. I'll click on it. Jim's Alley and Antheus Avenue. Okay, so you could easily, on a normal 10-day trip, we spend just 1 day in Now. On a 14-day trip, you could easily spend 2 or even 3. and it would be time really well spent.
And that's because of the
Then
incoming and outgoing current just changes each dive site throughout the day.
it's exactly so. And in a the itinerary for all of our trips is basically built around what the current is doing at Ningali Passage now. And every second week, it's the opposite.
Mm.
So in some weeks, you'll have an incoming current happening in the morning during the days that the boat can be there. The following week, it's going to be late in the afternoon, which isn't as good. The sun angle's not as good. So this itinerary I'm showing you, we're doing a anti-clockwise loop at the moment. Um, Generally, every second week, we do a similar thing, but in a clockwise direction instead, in order to nail the current at Nigali just the right way.
Outstanding.
Annoyingly, when our competition have come to town, it was the Aggressor originally, and then a Peter Hughes boat, and then the what are they called? They're the Master Fleet now, Siren Fleet.
Yeah.
Um, all three of those corporate organizations told their cruise directors that this is your itinerary, and on if it's Monday, it must be now, and that's what you do, which completely ignores the fact that the weather changes and the currents change. And people were doing these trips and then going home and writing the undercurrent and like scuba board and saying, "Oh, I had a really shit dive in Fiji. The
Right.
visibility was terrible." And I was finding myself having to go to the captain and say, "Look, don't go there on Tuesday when the wind is from the northeast. Go when the current is incoming and modify your plan, et cetera, et cetera." And slowly they began to do that, and slowly they began to give better experiences to their guests. But the point is, our cruise directors have it drilled into them as much as they want to be really efficient and have the itinerary all worked out and written down and everything. We say, don't do that. Plan 3 days out. When you can see what the weather is going to do, you already know what the current is likely to do, and make your decisions that way. And it ends up being a much more effective way of doing it.
Well, and
But
from my
one of the places,
perspective, and Rob, and from my perspective, I mean that's exactly what I'm looking for, right? We have a narrow window to experience 14 days of bliss, and I'm excited that you guys are as excited as we are to ensure the best possible experience. So I love hearing that we're gonna look at it and we're gonna make decisions based on current conditions, not any particular schedule. So that's heartwarming from my perspective. When we're spending that kind of money and that kind of time, we want the best experience possible.
well, our new cruise directors, they just started in February, are already taking charge, which is what I want. They're already finding places and figuring out the currents that are best and really making the trip their own. And that's part of the reason I hired them. One of the guys had worked in Palau for a long time,
Mm.
and the recommendations about them were that Chris tends to take charge of the situation and sometimes doesn't listen to the management. And well, that was actually music to my ears, because I don't want him calling me up and saying, what should I do on Tuesday? I want him looking at the weather and telling me, I think on Tuesday we should go here because of this. So I think,
Outstanding.
and by
Great.
next year, he'll be really experienced next year.
I
So,
love it. Yes.
and to have the opportunity to do a 2 week trip, he'll love that, because they've done week or 10-day trips, but they haven't been able to do a 2 week trip yet. Okay, Wakaya, again, at that photograph, you can't see the channel. I'll go back wide again. Wakaya is a very interesting island. It was one of the very first to sort of be stolen from the Fijian people during the battles between the Fijian chiefs and the Tongan chiefs, who were in the process of taking over Fiji about the same time that the whalers started discovering the place. Um, a Tongan chief attacked Wakaya, and all of the villagers on the island jumped off this cliff to their deaths.
Ugh.
And so when, like a year later, whaling ships started using the port of Levuka here to provision themselves because it's got a nice channel that you could sail in and out of. Somebody noticed that this island just adjacent didn't seem to have any people on it, so they went over and took it and started developing copra on it. And eventually it passed through various different hands and ended up being owned by a millionaire gold mining magnate from Canada who bought the island and developed the Wakaya Club, which is this fancy resort, and a bun actually built a village for the staff, built this little modest home for himself, and um, and this is was the premium resort for rich people to go to. After Bill Gates was famously married in Hawaii and hired all the helicopters so the paparazzi couldn't take pictures of him, he came and had his secret honeymoon here in Wakaya. And we were the only people who knew because we were anchored out in the bay and the Wakaya skiff went driving past. And one of our passengers looked down and went, "My God, that's Bill Gates." So that's Wakaya. It was sold 4 or 5 years ago to, I don't know how you say that, Nixius or something. It's the cult, the sex cult, whose owners are all in jail now.
Oh, wow.
Uh, the Bronfman daughters, the Seagram's whiskey heiresses, were supporters of it, and they bought Wakaya to whisk the boss guy away before the feds caught up with him. But they caught up with him beforehand, and he's in jail now, as is at least one of the Bronfman sisters. So the island has kind of fallen on hard times since then. But that doesn't affect us because we don't care about all that stuff. We anchor, go out through this little channel, and dive along the outside reef here, which is full of beautiful little fish, like this decorated dartfish, but also mantas. And several sets of cruise directors have been getting more and more involved in photographing and recognizing the mantas and working with the Manta Trust in Suva to identify new ones. And just last week, they identified a new manta that nobody had ever seen before. And they've got a whole series of ones that they know quite well. And they know the coral heads that are the cleaning stations where the mantas come to. And while you're waiting for a manta, there's beautiful macro photography stuff all around. The coral here isn't great. Um, for whatever reason has caused this channel to cut through the reef, which we think is a freshwater upwelling. We think water from the high island somehow has made its way out there over millions of years and kept that channel clear of coral. That same mechanism, whatever it is, means that the hard coral on the edges of the channel isn't brilliant. It's kind of rubbly, but again, the photographers among you will appreciate that you get a whole different range of critters that live in rubble from the critters that live on a beautiful hard coral reef.
That's
So that's what Wakaya is about: is big critters, mantas, and often there's a great hammerhead that's lived here for decades, and we often see it. You see smaller scalloped hammerheads from time to time, and lots of cool little things, including blue ribbon eels, um, leaf scorpion fish,
Mm.
all that sort of stuff. So it's one of our favorites. It's also a really good anchorage in here close to the island. So if it is a bit windy and blustery, it's nice and comfortable in here. And it's another place where on a shorter trip we'll spend 1 day, but you could easily spend 2 or even more. From there, we go north. Oh, sorry. We go north to this island, which is called Wakangai. Wakangai was the leper colony for the Pacific Islands for many, many years. Lepers were brought here from all through the South Pacific and more or less unceremoniously dumped ashore, a bit like they were in Hawaii at Father Damien's Kalaupapa. There were priests and nuns here to look after them, and those people did the best they could to provide a reasonable life for those poor lepers. Eventually, the leprosy colony was moved ashore to Suva in, I think it was the late 70s, and the island became a quarantine area for different things, including sheep that were brought from New Zealand but released on Makangai for something like 7 years before they were allowed to be released out to the rest of Fiji. We often do a village visit here. Really lovely people live here. Um, and since 2016, we've done more and more village visits here because in 2016, after that giant cyclone, we had a charter that was supposed to have left on the Saturday. And we could see from the weather forecast that the cyclone was going to get there on Sunday. So we put everybody in a big, strong concrete hotel along with our cruise directors to serve as the communications team. And the cyclone came through Sunday night and really did a lot of damage. It killed 40 people, destroyed a lot of Fiji. And the next day, nobody was allowed out. The day after that, we were able to start the trip. We had a whole group there from um, Kentucky, I believe. And the second day, they showed up here at Makangai and went to the turtle farm and didn't see anybody. So they didn't anchor, steamed around the corner all the way down here to where the village is. And as they came around the corner here, the people were all standing on the beach doing this very un-Fijian thing of calling for help. So the boat anchored, rushed ashore. This village had been completely decimated, and including their water tanks. So they had no water. The spring on the island had dried up only a few days before. So the spring was dry, their water tanks were gone. They were dying of thirst. And we were the first people to get there, and it was already 3 or possibly even 4 days after the cyclone. So the boat anchored, we've got a giant reverse osmosis plant, and we had filled the boat up with emergency supplies before we left, including lots of water jugs. So with our skiff, our crew, and all the passengers, we set up a delivery system and took all this water ashore. Eventually, somebody found a water tank that wasn't broken. They were able to resurrect it. We had something to pour water into. That took most of the day. And in the mid-afternoon, it was boiling hot. And the cruise directors said to the passengers, "All right, we've done that. That's good. Let's go and have a nice, cool dive." And the passengers went, "What? No fucking way. These people don't have a roof over their heads. We're not leaving here until we've at least done that." So they scavenged a bunch of building materials, roofing tin and stuff, and built a lean-to that was dry when it rained and out of the sun when it was hot, and finished that after dark, and finally agreed to return to the boat and went diving the next day. I'm emotional about it because this group came back about last month before that, and went down here and went back ashore and saw the people from this village and exchanged photographs and were thanked hugely. So, sorry about that.
No. I love that story because I think that highlights how, gracious divers are. I mean, it's, it's a human experience.
It's true. I've only had the most positive experience with all of the divers we've had over all these years. And yeah, I think because you're so close to nature, you have to see nature in a broader way than just the fish on the reef or just the trees on the land and the people who live there, the way it's all intertwined.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Divers are great. However, the diving at Makangai, which is why we're here, is a whole series of small coral heads up here in the northern part. And they're little, they're not big enough for all the passengers at one time, but there are a whole bunch of them. So we spread the people out and you dive a different coral head each dive. They're definitely macro. They're not as beautiful as many of the places you have already been at that point, but there's lovely, lovely macro critters. It's nice and protected, and it's coupled with the village visit. It's a wonderful place to stay.
And those village visits, I might add, are emotional as well because you get to really experience the Fijian culture And they are the hospitality is overwhelming. I mean, it just, they really bring you in, and they really want to share their culture with us as divers and as guests to their area. So that's, I think, what makes the whole trip special, is some of those experiences, getting to interact with the villages and the individuals that call this home, right? This is their home, and we're visiting, so they want to share that.
And they're totally honored that you would choose to come visit their village.
Yes.
And they'll ask you as we sit down to begin to do the little formal ceremony, where we offer sevu sevu, which is a bundle of kava. Our spokesman, often Mo, will do this elaborate formal speech asking permission to be there, which they'll accept with a formal speech, and then they'll do a formal speech welcoming us, and we do another formal speech back again, accepting their protection, because in the olden days, the Fijians were all at each other. So if you came from the valley next door into this valley without the proper protocol, you'd get eaten. So this is sort of developed from that, and I don't think anybody's been eaten, in the last
Lately, anyway,
few years.
right?
Um, so yeah, I was going to say, after we've done our formal welcoming, the villagers want to know about you guys. Where are you from? What do you do? Why are you here? And they're genuinely curious about that, and honored that you would choose to come visit with them.
Yes.
Once we leave Makangai, or as I pointed out, we might do this itinerary in the other direction, but eventually you end up at the Namena Marine Reserve. And this was the first marine reserve built by commercial, or not commercial divers, but us. There was a resort on the island that was run by this really hard-assed woman from Pittsburgh who really was upset by the fact that fishing boats were coming in and fishing on her reef. So she fought and fought and fought and fought, and finally won and got the fishing boats kicked out. And eventually the NGOs got involved and helped. And this entire reef structure became a huge marine protected area. And divers like us pay some small amount. It's like $25 or something for permission to dive here. And that money goes up to these villages, which are the ones that among them share the diving rights to Namena. So Namena also gets some divers that come across from Savu Savu, which is up here. The Jean-Michel Cousteau Resort is in Savu Savu.
Ah.
There are a number of resorts along this coast. The diving in Savu Savu is terrible. So in order to have good diving, those guys come all the way down to Namena, which in trade winds is a long and really uncomfortable open ocean passage. So they don't go that often. And in July, it's unlikely that we'll see them very often, if at all. But there are two main areas in the Marine Reserve. There's the South Save Attack Passage, and there's the North Save Attack Passage. Save Attack is because sailing ship going from Savu Savu up here down to the whaling port could save attack by cutting through this channel and back out on that one and making its way down south.
Got it.
What's good about these channels from our point of view is that when the current is coming in on this northern North Save Attack Passage, so when it's running from east to west, it's running out on this side of the reef. When it switches, it comes in on this side, on the south side, and flows out on the north side, which means that we can go back and forth between the two sides of the reef and have incoming current at both locations. So you
Outstanding.
have relatively clear water.
Yeah.
The north side has, again, does the satellite picture show it? Doesn't. I now have drone photos that make it much more clear where these reefs actually are. But it's along the edge of a drop-off that drops off to something like 2,000 feet. And then the top of that drop-off runs from 60 down to about 100 feet, covered in sand and a little bit of rock. And further in are bommies that come up to close to the surface, which are just covered with soft coral and hard corals and small fish. But the drop off itself concentrates all of the pelagics from all up and down this long reef. So it's one of our best places for just hanging out. And here's a place where your reef hook will especially be useful because the dive is its best when the current is its strongest. And when that current is coming in and hitting that wall and zooming up, that's when all the fish just concentrate right there. So you hook your reef hook in at the top of that drop off and spend as much time as your computer or common sense will allow you before eventually breaking free and going up shallow to the coral reefs, coral heads that are behind you. The other site is this one up here called Schoolhouse. For many years, we didn't know about it. We only dived North Savatac. I'm a swimmer kind of guy. And on one trip, we had another guy who was a swimmer. So I asked him, hey, you want to go for an exploratory swim? He went, yeah, sure. So I told the skiff driver, look for us up there to the northwest somewhere. And he and I swam all the way along this reef, along this reef, along here, along here, along here, along here, along here. And when we finally got here, it was already well into our dive and we were forced to be like 30 feet. But we got here and there were schools and schools of fish, schools of barracuda, trevally, scad, a little small trevally-like guy, and down deep, sharks circling around. And we, right then and there, named it Schoolhouse, got back in the skiff, came zooming back down here where everybody else was just finishing their dive. We got on the dive deck. We were so happy with what we had seen, but there was this big buzz, and we couldn't get a word in edgewise. Everybody was talking among themselves. They'd seen this huge shark. And one guy said, for sure it was a whale shark. And another really experienced diver said, no, no, it was a tiger shark. And I'm like, a whale shark and a tiger, they're completely different.
Right.
Which one was it? And they said, no, a whale shark, no, a tiger shark, no, a whale shark. And then the whale shark guy said, well, look, I've got video of it. So we all raced inside, dripping on our wood floors, put it on the TV, and it was the really bad kind of video you've all seen, where he's just kind of got the camera turned on, and he's swimming along behind his wife, and he looks this way and he looks that way, and then he, as he looks to his left, you can see this big shadow materializing, and his wife exhales in this cloud of bubbles, and he turns the camera off. So we never did know if it was a whale shark or a tiger shark. And it wasn't until the next trip that I was able to lure somebody to go back up with me and dive Schoolhouse again. And now it's become one of our main dive sites, and it's utterly spectacular.
Yay.
So even on a 7-day trip, we often spend 2 days in Namena. On a 10-day trip, we always spend 2 days here. On a 14-day trip, you could spend 3 or 4. So in addition to the 2 main dives on the north side of the channel, which take the current where incoming current brings clear water, there's a whole series of dives down here on the south side. Just the named ones are mushrooms, tetons, two thumbs up, and then further down, there's Seven Sisters that run all along here. Further down, all the way down to here, is a dive site called Fantasy, kind of a stupid name, but it's full of giant fans. And there are other dives that we've never even done along this edge. So I would encourage you guys, particularly if this ends up being kind of the middle or the later part of your trip, to just spend some more time here and check out some of these other dive sites. You can always, if it's kind of only mediocre, you can always return to one of the ones we know as brilliant. So that makes exploratory diving easier and more fun.
More palatable.
And more palatable, exactly. So that's something I would encourage. Okay, as we continue on, now I'm going to be repeating the same story. There's zillions of reefs along here. We've dived a little bit. I think I've dived off this point. I've dived off this point. I think I dived this channel, believing it might have all the sharks in it that Ningali does to the south, and it didn't. I do remember diving this little channel, again, hoping it would concentrate sharks and discovering that it didn't. But that was one dive 25 years ago. So it's sort of would be foolish to say, oh, that place is shit, because I dived it once 25 years ago and I didn't see any shark. So I would encourage you guys, under the guidance of Chris and Clow, to maybe explore some more of these sites. The one here where the boat goes through the channel, actually, sorry, the channel. And here also is where the satellite imagery lets me down, because there are reefs that run all the way down here and all the way back up. And Google hasn't seen fit to take good pictures of them yet. So eventually it will. But there's a little thin channel here that we call the Naya Flya. And it can have a very strong current. And you dive it because it has a very strong current. And you drop in on the outside and you just fly down this channel over a Bami rises up ahead of you. As you get closer, it resolves from gray into brilliant and colorful, and then you see fish, and then you fly off of it. And then here comes another one. And it's the same thing. It gets beautiful. You look at it, you think, God, I wish I can stop, but no way. And zoom, you fly off of it as well. And as you continue, you eventually work your way to the edge of the channel, where suddenly the current spits you around the corner into this absolutely calm, beautiful, hard coral garden where you can poke around slow for the rest of your dive. I absolutely love it. But there are people who still get freaked out a bit by strong currents. And I acknowledge that that's a thing. But it's a site where you don't have to go against the current. The crew can drop you in the right place, pick you at the right time, and I would encourage it. And then, as I said, there are other sites up and down this reef, including, like, look at that little channel. That's got to be.
That's
Look
got to
at
be good, right?
a whole line of coral heads that stretch out near that channel. That's got to be good. But on our 7 and 10-day trips, we don't have time to go there. Okay, here, not shown at all in the satellite view, is an absolutely brilliant 2 coral heads called Cat's Meow. That was my wife, Kat, who just popped her head in here a moment ago to get me to turn on the other modem. It's significant that I named the most beautiful dive site in the world after Kat. I actually proposed to her at this dive site.
Oh.
It is brilliant. And it used to be, on the nautical chart, there's a reef shown out here somewhere in deep water. So on a beautiful calm day, I came up here and tried to find that reef, and it's definitely not where the nautical chart shows it. So we moved in towards the reef that we could see and went over and dropped in on this relatively deep reef. The top's only in about 20 feet of water. And it was just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So as you can see by the little photograph here, it's completely covered in soft coral on the sides and down on the bottom. It's got a tunnel that goes through it that's featured prominently in the Coral Reef Adventure IMAX film. I say that because it's my scene. This picture of me swimming in with the temperature recorder. I swim in. I manage not to bump into the camera. I put the temperature recorder on and I swim away. So you need to really watch quickly to see that. But it's a great site. Nearby it is this one called Undeniable. You see that? Isn't that clever?
I do. Very clever.
There's another one. Oh, you guys can do it. We've got another name. We used it in Tonga, but we need to name a site in Fiji. It's called Deniamite. So maybe we'll put you guys in charge of finding the site that gets to have that wonderful name.
I love it.
But Undeniable is a little similar to Cat's Meow. It's on the same section of reef. It's flushed with nutrient-rich water. It's quite a bit bigger. The coral head comes to the surface, and then instead of dropping straight down, it goes down in tiers. The hard coral on it is absolutely spectacular. A lovely sight. Just backing up one to Cat's Meow, I think I got off on talking about myself there and forgot the critical thing, which is that the other site adjacent to Cat's Meow is called Human Nature. Human spelled with 2 N's because it's spelled or named after Paul Human, who wrote the Reef ID books, as that you would be well aware of. And 25 years ago, Paul did a trip with us, and during the trip, he was telling me that he had just come back from Vanuatu, and the best diving he'd ever seen was in Vanuatu. And we've got this super capable boat, and maybe we ought to go to Vanuatu. So I have Paul Human telling me he'll guide us around Vanuatu. Well, of course, we set up a trip there. We not just one, because it's a long way to go. We set 3 back-to-back 10-day trips in Vanuatu. Went out to our passenger list then, which was loyal but not nearly as big as it is now, and almost instantly filled all 3 trips. So Paul came out to do a Fiji trip about a month before the first of the Vanuatu trips. And he went off to do this other coral head that isn't Cat's Meow, it's nearby. And he came back and he said, Rob, sit down. I went, okay. And he said, you're going to hate me for this, but there's nothing in Vanuatu that even touches that dive site. And I went, oh shit, okay. So off we went to Vanuatu. It was very interesting. It actually is surprisingly poor diving. We were a little bit amazed by that. There aren't the coral reefs that you get here. There's not even the sharks. We expected if they're not coral reefs, at least there'd be lots of big pelagics, and we didn't find that to be true. We found the islands are amazing, giant waterfalls, and it was really a worthwhile place to go to. And we did, in fact, go back another time about 5 years later. But the diving was a little bit disappointing. But Human Nature is a spectacular dive site named after Paul Human.
Nice.
Okay, so we have come full circle here. We've started in Lautoka, and we either did a counterclockwise loop or a clockwise loop. We went to a handful of the places that we know really well, all of which have other places nearby that we don't know as well. And it brings us back to having to go home.
Cool.
So I realize I spoke way too long, but are there any questions that I possibly didn't cover in that long monologue?
I loved your long monologue because all it does is it makes me want to leave today. But do talk real quickly about currents. If we have a newer diver, I think that they'll certainly get their taste of currents and maybe learn how to use a reef hook. I'm assuming dive guides will show and be gracious with that process. But it sounds like they obviously can get experience quickly. As you know, it's a little bit like being a kite. They once you get hooked in, you just get neutral. You add a little bit of air to your BCD, and you just sit and watch the world go by. So having a reef hook is very helpful in currents. So I don't want to discourage anybody from currents, but I don't want to steer clear of currents. That there are certainly going to be currents.
Yeah, you're completely right. And because it's a 2-week trip, it's going to be half of the moon cycle. So you're going to have everything from the either full or no moon bigger currents, bigger tides and therefore currents, to the section in between where there's less currents. And one of the things the cruise directors will consider is
2 minutes.
how to plan that so that the sites that have strongest currents in general hopefully can be dived during the time frame that has less current. But there are lots of techniques for how to dive with currents, and all of the best stuff, frankly, is where the currents are strongest. The fish like the currents. That's why they're there. And so there are a lot of techniques for doing that, ways to use reef hooks, ways to make your way if you have to do a little sprint across a small channel to get into the lee of the next coral head. Put your arms out in front of you like this and fin with little short things, and you can go up current virtually twice as fast as if you don't do that. So those kind of tricks are really helpful. And even in the course of a day, the current is going to vary quite a lot. So if you're fully, strongly never want to dive in a current at all, you should probably just go to the Caribbean. But Fiji and all of the best dives in the Pacific are because we have these current washed areas.
What was the last time anyone saw a Naya pipefish?
Ah, wonderful
That's from
question.
Carol, yes.
My wife, Kat, found the Naya pipefish. She recognized that it was something different that she'd never seen before. She asked Jerry Allen to come out. First, Paul Human looked at it and said, "Yeah, never saw one of those." Then Jerry Allen came out, said he would catch one and take fin clippings in order to identify it properly. He lied to us, actually killed two of them in
Oh,
order to prove that they are what they are, and we've harassed him about that ever since. But it is a very unusual pipefish. It's quite shy, so when you see it in a hole, it very quickly ducks out of sight. But I believe they saw one. If it wasn't the last charter, it was the one before. The new cruise directors, Chris and Clow, are learning where it lives and what it looks like, and the Fijian dive guides already know that and are successfully finding it for different people.
so must give credit where credit is due. Carol is married to Eric, and that was actually Eric's question, and he said he saw it in 2013. So, yeah, memorable, obviously, because it's so elusive, right? So, pretty cool. And Eric, of course, always gets, Eric and Carol both are a dynamic duo, and they always get great imagery, either video or stills of those elusive fish that make us all jealous. So, all right. So thank you, Rob, so that's in a nutshell. I think what makes this trip special is that we're not only doing a 7-day trip, we're not doing the 10-day trip, we're doing the 14-day trip. So this really gives us lots of opportunity to explore, enjoy some of these special dive sites. And maybe go to different sites when the situation allows. So I cannot tell you how excited I am about this trip and what it offers. Is it possible, Sean, to switch back to our PowerPoint? I just want to. I only have a few more minutes left here. Bear with me, and let me complete the presentation, and then we'll also give a link to the video that is on the Naya, about the Naya, and will really just throw you right over the edge because it shows all of the beautiful dive sites and the soft corals and stuff like that. So Sean is switching to, can everybody see my PowerPoint with the dive conditions? Can you see that, Rob? Okay, good. All right, so again, we've already talked about currents, so we'll go to the next slide. The diving is conducted from two 22-foot rigid inflatables ribs, right, that they transfer from the Naya to the dive sites. It's usually a short distance. Divers are typically organized into small groups based on their experience level and desired dive site, with each group led by a dedicated dive guide. Upon receiving a detailed dive briefing, each group gears up, boards the panga, and enters the water with a back roll entry. And the crew is available to assist divers with any physical limitations they may have. So if you need to, gear up on the inflatable, hand it up on the inflatable, all of that will happen. The Naya uses 2 skiffs, and so anybody that surfaces early will be taken back to Naya so they can enjoy a shower and a brownie while they wait for the hardcore macro photographers and videographers to complete their dive. All right, next slide. So here's just some quick imagery. So let's click through these. So schooling fishes, those anthias and those beautiful soft corals, ribbon eels, the goby fish, the goby and the shrimp. Of course, the different. What is this one here? Gosh, Carol, what is that? It's the. I just completely blanked on the name of that. Anyway.
Emperor shrimp.
Emperor shrimp, and then what's the other one that Michelle?
The ghost pipefish.
Ghost pipefish. There he is. That's it. Oh, good job. Sharks and grouper. That hard coral that Rob was talking about with all those beautiful anthus and beautiful colorful fish that just call that home. We've got the scorpion fish, the dart fish, various crabs, manta rays, and look at that hard coral that it's going over. Gah, pick me. Bubble coral shrimp, or they're the orangutan shrimp, nudibranchs. Yeah, the mantis. Yeah, crab. Thank you. Mantis, shrimp. Of course, the anthus, the different anthus fish, and the goby. Soft corals, baby. Anemone fish, whip coral shrimp. Yes?
Mm.
Yeah?
That's about
I like
Zanzibar shrimp.
Zanzibar shrimp. There we go. We've got the pygmy seahorses. Let's see. Those are
Like a
cuttlefish.
cuttlefish.
Yeah. How many night dives, Rob?
Turn this back on. I don't know for sure on a 14-day trip, particularly because you aren't going someplace that night, you'll have more options for night dives than we do on a shorter trip where the boat's got to get underway and get to the next destination. So, off the top of my head, 14-day trip, I'd guess there's probably 9 or 10 options for night dives. There'll be one night where it's our big crew party where we won't do that, but otherwise you'll have a lot of chances.
Nice, nice, nice. White tip reefs, of course. Dolphins, hopefully, right? It's thinking. It's a little slow. Okay, so quickly, obviously on the Naya itself, there's lots of room for games and some reading, soaking in the sun, so surface intervals are well spent. All of us with laptop computers, you got to view all of your imaging. Maybe going ashore to those beautiful sandy beaches. And then this is the image that we were talking about earlier in the presentation where the crew gathers around, puts mats down on the floor, gathers up instruments, and sings, and usually a kava presentation. So kava is a root and part of their ceremonial gatherings, and everybody gets to try it. It has a little bit of a what would you call it, Rob? How would you describe kava?
You get a little bit of tingling on your lips, which seems like it's promising, but then not that much happens after that. It kind of slows you down a little bit. I love it, actually. I think it tastes good. People say, oh, it tastes like dirty dishwasher water, but if you know what dirty dishwater tastes like, then you are not to be trusted in the first place. So it's good. I just read, though, there's a huge issue here in Australia with it being smuggled into the Aboriginal settlements in the northern part of Australia, where people are spending as much as 1/6 of their income to buy kava. And the reason Fijians and Fijian government likes it is because nobody ever drinks too much kava and goes home and beats up their wife. Compared to alcohol, it's a much safer drug. But people do spend too much of their income on it and stay up all night drinking it and then don't go to work in the morning.
Sure.
So it had, like everything, it's got its issues.
It's
But
got
you
its
guys
issues.
probably can't drink that much.
No. It's fun, and and the crew enjoys it. We have a good time. Everybody sings along, so it's a lovely way to participate with the crew and enjoy the evening. So let's see here. Finally, it's the day of departure. It'll be August 8th. We disembark the boat around 8 a.m. We'll plan our international trips, flights back home with a departure no earlier than 1 p.m. And we might want to consider a day room in Nadi. It's not included in the price of the trip, but very inexpensive, just to relax prior to our flights out. The Nadi International Airport is not, there's not a like a business class lounge or anything like that. I don't think. So the hotels that are close by the airport are nice, ways to spend the service interval. Listen to me. The time in between. So last but not least, I want to talk about our Y-kiki package. So what's included is 14 days, 13 nights aboard the Naya, exploring the very best sights of Fiji and new areas seldom dive. Of course, it includes nitrox, all meals and snacks, non-alcoholic beverages, wine with dinner, airport transfers, and your typical Y-kiki souvenir rash garden video. Not included will be your international flights, naughty hotels pre and post, and meals on land. Dive staff gratuities, DAN, which is required, your dive accident insurance, of course, alcoholic beverages, COVID test, is that still required? No, that's not required. And any fuel surge that might be incurred. So you're looking at just under $10,000, and you've got your the payment schedule there. So at the end of the day, it is simply. Let me hold on.
While she's doing her maths there,
Yeah.
I'll point out that we don't have a fuel surcharge at the moment. We try to avoid having one unless the world economy goes ballistic, which I guess is a possibility. We're unlikely to have a surcharge next year.
Outstanding. So in the end, what I was going to say was that it just culminates into one great dive vacation. This here is the link, and I will send this out to everybody that's participating tonight. But a link to the Naya video, which will just feature all of those beautiful the mantas and the soft corals, the hard corals, all the things that I have a possibility of seeing. Of course, videos of the Naya itself, and what a great base it will make for our dive vacation throughout, and the crew. So I do want to thank Rob for joining us tonight. Again, Rob is the owner of the Naya, and has how long have you owned the Naya? It's been 30 plus years.
Yeah, it's 32 in July.
32 years. And is it family owned, Rob? It's family owned now, right?
Yeah, the other partner is my sister and her husband, and we've been running it. She and he still live in Fiji and run it from a day-to-day basis. I moved to Australia when my kids got big enough for better schooling, and I go back as often as I can, and I get to do fun things like this
Outstanding.
forum right now.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. I'm thrilled, super excited. We are humbled, and really looking forward to our trip. So does anybody have any questions before we sign off here? Let me just double check really quick in the chats. Or if you want to jump in, let me know. Dan says, thank you so much, Rob. Great presentation.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Rob, I have a quick question. Are Big Mo and Karoy still on the boat?
Yes and no. Big Mo is actually captain now.
Oh.
So he's worked his way all the way up to captain. Karoy is not, and I can't remember what happened. He got a better offer somewhere, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
So Eric, that's Carol of Eric and Carol fame. They're just fun guests that join us on a lot of dive trips. And so Eric is the photographer and Carol is the videographer.
Yeah, right.
So
And we were on the boat in 2013, and then 2014, we went to Tonga with you to see the whales.
all
right.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Well, with that, we've gone a little bit long, but what a great way to do it. And always love talking about scuba diving. Please join me in thanking Rob for joining us tonight. Yay! And we'll have this video available. At this time, it's officially recorded, and I'll have it available on our YouTube channel shortly. So with that, thank you again, and everybody have a wonderful evening. I've got 8 spaces left on this trip, so give me a call if you're interested, and I can go over all the gory details. All right. Thank you, Rob. We sure appreciate you.
Vinaka, everybody.
Good
Vinaka
night.
mole.
Good night. All right. Take good care. Appreciate you.